So now we're going to go on to the simple past, which is the past that we use the most often, I guess. And it's just like you put the ed at the end of the verb for most verbs, and then you have the irregular verbs, which we're going to talk about. And so it's basically like the same structure as the simple present, but you got to conjugate the verbs in the past, and there's no s for the third person singular. So he, she, it, there's no s at the end of the word. So it's I walked, you walked, she walked, we walked, they walked. Much simpler than Portuguese, where you have thousands and thousands of conjugations for the same verb for you to conjugate in the same tense, but for different people. You guys know what I'm talking about. We all learned this in school. So we're going to move on to some simple examples. So I ate cake, like something that happened in the past, something that happened for a fact. You cleaned the house. They put music on. She grew up in Massachusetts. So all things that happened in the past. And then when you're negating something, you say I didn't eat cake, or I did not. So you're using the past of the verb to do, which is did. And then didn't is a contraction, so you're putting two words together, so it's did and not. And so that's how you're. Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Okay. So going on with negations, I didn't eat cake. You didn't clean the house. They didn't put music on. And she didn't grow up in Massachusetts. So see how the verbs are not conjugated in the past anymore. They're simply in the present. And that's because the past is already in the verb did or didn't. So you don't have to put it in the past twice. If does that make sense to everyone? Like, you can nod your heads or put it in the chat. So you don't have to talk about the past twice, if that makes sense in your head. And then some questions. Did I eat cake? Did you clean the house? Did they put music on? Did she grow up in Massachusetts? And now we're going to talk about something important that's using either did or didn't in the questions. When you use did, you're like wondering, you're like, did I eat cake? Like, was it something that happened? Like, you're not, like, you have no intention behind it. You're just genuinely curious about something. Like, did they put music on? Like, is that a thing that they did? However, when you use didn't, was like, didn't I eat cake? You're like, you're pretty sure you did, but you're not sure if that happened. You're like, didn't I eat cake? Or didn't you clean the house? When you're like, it's like if you were expecting them to clean the house, but then you get there and they didn't, and you're like, didn't you do that? Didn't you clean the house? So there's a different intonation in the word that you use to ask the question. Like, didn't they put music on? You're like, you're kind of upset, or you're like just confused as to why something didn't happen. Or like, if you were sure someone grew up in Massachusetts, and you're like, didn't they grow up in Massachusetts? Or something like that. Okay, so this is more of me being like picky about like intonation, but it's important for you to know, because when people ask questions, there are different like reasons behind it, and there's different like ways to ask questions, like we do in Portuguese. So the main thing that you guys have to watch out for when talking in the past are the irregular verbs. There are several irregular verbs, but once you start talking, they kind of start coming more naturally to you. Because, for example, if you say, for example, the verb to go, the past of the verb to go is went, which is completely different. But once you start listening to English very often and you start speaking English more often, you're going to realize that the word goed doesn't make sense in your head. So it's definitely an irregular verb, and it's went. To give is gave, and like gived will start to make sense in your head too. So this is something that of course you got to study, but you're also going to acquire this knowledge with time as you like move on in your English speaking. Now we're going to talk about the future with will. I believe this is our last verb tense for today. We're going to have like a lot of time for questions too, if you guys have some. So for the future with will, it's like I will play music, you will play music, and things like that. So the will is what represents the future, and then the verb is just in simple present. And it works the same way as going to, but it's for a less immediate future usually. So like if you say I will go to school in the United States, it's like this will happen sometime in the future, God knows when. And if you say I'll go study in the United States next year, you're putting like a date to it. So it works basically the same way. It's just like a different sentence structure than the going to that we already talked about. So here are some examples. I will hug you when I see you. Or I will bake a cake. They will go to college. And she will protest in Massachusetts. So you can see it's very simple, pretty much the same as going to. And you can work with both of them. Like it's really your style of speaking. Like for me, I use more going to than anything else to talk about the future. But sometimes in a more formal environment, I'm gonna use the will. Like I will use will, because saying going to, you're inevitably gonna end up falling into like contractions and saying gonna, which is not exactly a formal word. So I know a lot of you are plan to apply to like university or college or high school, so you gotta use a more formal vocabulary and a more formal way of speaking when you're having those interviews, for example. So the negation, you just put the not. So I will not hug you, I will not bake a cake, I will not go to college, and she will not protest in Massachusetts. And then questions is you just flip the subject and the verb, the will, which is like another auxiliary word that we use. So will I hug you? Will you not bake a cake? See that the not goes after the you, but you can also use the contraction, which is won't you bake a cake? And this works the same way as like the difference between asking a question with did or didn't, or do and don't. So it's all about your intonation when you're asking the question, whether you're gonna use like the negative or the affirmative. So yeah, that's what I just talked about, the won't you. So will they go to college? There's supposed to be a question mark after college. And will she protest in Massachusetts? And that's basically all I have for today. It was kind of a quick lesson. Do you guys have any questions still about the verb tenses? Do you want me to go back to any of them? Like, did I go through them too fast? Please let me know in the chat, because otherwise I can't really know what you guys are thinking. Or you can say it out loud. Just unmute yourselves and say it out loud.
Okay. Hello again. I would like that you just say again about you talking about, I think, the irregular verbs, and then you say that we don't need to use I think the regular with when it's already in the past, something that's already in the past, and then you say something about don't use it 2 times. And that's I would like to say you just repeat, no everything, just to support.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. I'll go back to the slide so that it's easier for everyone to like understand what's happening. Um, so what I talked about when you're basically when you're asking questions, is when you don't want to use the past twice. Because so here's the thing: the verb to do, which is the auxiliary verb that we use to ask questions, is already in the past. So did I eat cake? The did is already in the past. So you're not going to say did I ate, because ate is the past of eat, to eat.
Right.
So you're not gonna say do I ate or did I ate or any variation. The only thing that you're gonna say if you're asking a question in the past is you're using the word did, and then you're using the verb that you're talking about always in the present. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Um, are there any other questions? That was a really good question. I wasn't sure if that was. Um, um, someone asked me, I think, in the chat, if you're um, more certain of things. Let me know if I'm reading your question wrong. If you're more certain of things when you use will or going to. Honestly, it depends on where you are and the people you're speaking with. Because going to can be just as assertive, just as like certain of what you're doing as will. When you're expressing uncertainty, you're usually going to use words like probably or maybe, but the difference between will and going to is ever so slight that there's really no difference in certainty. Let me know if I answered your question correctly, if that's what you were looking for. um, okay, cool. Does anyone have any other questions? I know this was kind of like a shorter class, but I know I wanted you guys to have time to give me questions. And if anyone has any like feedback, things that I could do better next time, please put it in the chat, either to everyone or just to me. That's fine too. Um, but that's basically all I have for today. No questions? No feedback? Okay, cool. I'll stop sharing my screen. Um, do you guys have any thank you, Giovanna. Yeah, of course. I'm glad you guys like the class. Do you think it's better to have like a shorter and faster class, or would you like me to make it longer? Like, let me know. Let me know what you think, because I really can work with this. Cool. Um, all right, so we've been at it for about half an hour. If that's like a good length for everyone, the classes are probably going to be this long. You're free to leave anytime you want. I will stay here for a little bit if you have any questions for me, and I can answer them like just to you or to like the group of people that stays. But otherwise, have a great day. I hope you guys enjoyed the class, and I hope you learned something from it. This class will be on our Google Classroom for you to access later if you want. Um, I forgot to record the first part of the class, so I'm gonna record that later, so it's gonna be a little bit different. But thank you very much for coming, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Thanks for coming.
Thank you and see you in next class.
See ya. Thank you for coming. Okay, do you guys at State have any like additional questions you would like me to answer? Okay, alguém perguntou como que fala praia, and that's like a very common question because so like beach in English is praia, but bitch is a swear word, and they're very close. So when you say beach, you gotta stretch out that vowel sound. So you gotta make it longer. So you're even like overdo it and go beach, because then there's no confusion whatsoever. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for the class. It helped a lot. Bye. Have a good day.
I'm glad it helped. Thank you. Mhm. Okay. Uh, Someone asked me about having a strong accent when you speak English and if that's a problem. And I'd say it's not a problem at all. I ended up basically, like, I still have a little bit of an accent, but I ended up basically like losing my accent because I've been speaking English with people in the United States for like 2 years now. But if you have an accent, that's no problem at all. It just means you also speak another language, which is pretty amazing. Like, if someone gives you a hard time for having an accent, you can tell them that you're bilingual and that you have an accent because English is not your first language, and they will be very understanding. So, having a strong accent is not a problem. Okay, last chance to ask any questions because I our meeting is probably about to end. Yeah. Okay, seeing that there aren't any more questions, I will end the meeting now. Thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you guys really enjoyed the lesson. And I'll see you next Tuesday.